what if I told you that the noun is the alchemist, the action is transmutation, and that's the key to how we're going to make this world our bitch. Okay? We have a lot to talk about. It's March 1st. March is a very, what could I say? I would say transformative, but then again, that's kind of a basic generic term. This is sensational. Okay? You already know the rules of the game. No reneging, no talking across the table, no ego, only soul evolution. This is Speaking of Spade. I'm Spade. Let's get into it.
Now listen, daughter. Pay attention, pray and listen. Hear your father. These lies they told are so familiar. They will haunt you, they will kill you. Keep you hostage, king will heal you. Before him, adore him.
Whew, child. Okay, so we definitely did skip a week. I just want to let you guys know that the reason why we skipped a week is because I needed to make sure I stood on what I'm about to explain to you, okay? If you follow me on social media, then you probably see the girl's been a little bit outside more than usual. The girl has been actually showing the world what she's doing more than usual. And see, that's not really my speed. That's not really my game. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? New people looking in, you never know that the girl really does get down. The girl really does have a good time. Because I've learned to separate private life and social media. I feel like that's the best thing I could do for someone with my placements and just for someone just who I am, how I move. You know, I feel like because of the reputation that I have built, because of the reputation that I'm maintaining, some things in my private life, it's not your business. Because sometimes my business ain't your business. So therefore, we're going to get what you can actually, you know what I'm saying, hold. We gonna let you see what you can actually, you know, grasp. Okay. So earlier this month, in February, I did discuss that I was going to read a chapter of Proverbs every day because as we're going into this new Aries energy and me being a teacher of wisdom, I got to make sure that I'm also staying up to par when it comes to teaching. And something that's been coming up a lot lately has been transmutation. And a lot of people kind of brought up points of like, oh, well, alchemy. And I'm like, yeah, you know, it is. But transmutation is the action and an alchemist, is the noun. It's a people, place, or thing. Okay. And I want to just dissect this deeper because the more I read Proverbs, the more I confirm exactly what I said. Now, you're going to get your notebook. Get your notebook. Go get your pen. Go get your notebook. Okay. We won't be interpreting the Bible in a very generic term. We're going to use this as our tool for the wisdom. All right. So if you don't believe in the Bible or it triggers you in some way, just wait for next week's episode. We'll talk about something else. No, probably not. The whole month will actually be me dissecting Proverbs 1 through 31. There's 31 days in March, and I'm going to do an episode every Sunday, and it's going to cover 6 verses of it because if I know one thing for sure, Proverbs is the book of wisdom, which is the key to success. And if we are in a lot of Aries energy, we're in a lot of Mars energy. We're in a lot of like warlike mentality. And when you're in a warlike mentality, the best thing you can do is move off wisdom and not impulse, right? And when I say impulse, meaning you're not self-destructive. You're not, willy-nilly on the whim, we're not throwing on the wham in the circle. We're not doing that. If we gonna be on some horse shit, we're gonna be on some fire stuff. You have to move in a manner that makes sense. So before I get into it, one of the things that I wanted to discuss is that right now, the month of March is a big desensitization. We're having to be desensitized. I hope I'm saying that word properly. We're having to be desensitized. And you're probably like, well, that would be a negative thing because it now makes us prone to negativity or prone to the harmful behavior that's happening across the world. I want to say that is the absolute definition of to be desensitized. It's basically to not, you kind of lose feeling over a while, right? And I want to say it like this. We're not being desensitized to lack empathy. We're being desensitized so we are not being controlled or we're not being affected. One of the things that if you realize when the world is going through chaos, it creates everybody else to have chaos. If there's bombings happening, if there's, killings happening, if there's robbery, if there's scamming, when there is a large number of deadly things happening or very harmful things happening, it normally places a lot of people into fear. Now, the people that are being affected by this, I send all peace and love and safety up, like around you. Okay. I pray that you are paying attention to where you don't need to go, where you need to move, and where you need to, handle things. I hope you're also paying attention to who's around you, what they're doing. This is the desensitization process of desensitization. If I'm saying it wrong, y'all know what I mean. Okay. This is the process of you guys realizing you have become very sensitive and very privy to a lot of things that probably should have never been your concern. One of the things that I had posted about, I said, it really, when people act very like annoyed and concerned about other people's circumstances because they didn't grow up the same way, I'm always aggravated, because it's just like, if you grew up in such a beautiful mentality, if you grew up in such a wonderful environment, why are you so clueless to what's going on in the world? One of the things that you have to admire about kids that come from money, or come from a loving family, or come from a wise family, come from a family of a certain caliber, they're not naive to what the world holds. They're not naive or green to what could happen, or what's the possibility. That none of that is happening. And that's what I'm trying to say. Is the way that those families move, those families desensitize their children to not be sensitive to certain situations, so you don't fall victim to it. One of the things I realize is that when kids are loved properly, when they're loved properly and informed properly, they aren't naive to giving their love freely, because they realize how much value it holds. Because the world understands that once you know your worth and your value, you move at a different frequency, you move at a different vibration, right? And because of that, the world is basically going to shine light on a lot of negativity, because if God, the universe, Buddha, whoever you believe in, doesn't desensitize you to what's in the world, you will go and try to be in a heroic savior mentality to get everybody to feel the same love and support and wisdom that you were raised by. And that's something you can't do. It's not to say that you won't be able to be a helping hand when it's needed. It's unnecessary. I've been trying to tell y'all this for a long time, that a lot of things that we have been trying to teach, and I've been trying to teach people, we're trying to get you to not do things that are unnecessary. So many people don't understand that life doesn't have to be hard. And the saying of they'll learn the hard way, it really bothers me at this point in my life, because it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. I do understand that people give advice out of jealousy. People do things because they don't want to see you shine. However, wisdom is universal. So if wisdom is universal, how about we actually even utilize the wisdom in the equation to see if it works? You'll never be able to see if your experiment is valid until you try it. And I feel like most people are not willing to take the wisdom because they are in a mindset of war mentality, of like someone is coming after them, someone is trying to harm them, someone is guiding them wrong. And one of the things that I have been saying lately when I talk to people and give people advice is sit with it. Like, has that never even occurred to anybody to just sit with the information that someone is giving them? Like, just sit with it. It's like, in what world did you think that you get information from someone and you automatically have to apply it? Do you ever just sit with the information that you received? That's why I can't really sympathize with people anymore with y'all giving these sad ass excuses of, well, y'all know everybody don't be giving it with good intent and good intent. Everybody understands that intent is based off of process. You have to process to understand. You have to process in order to receive. Why would you even packages have to be processed before they go through the shipment, the fulfillment centers? Like, common sense, people. You just try to tell me you just out here taking advice or declining advice and you ain't even sat with it yet? Like, people are not even allowing things to truly go through their minds and go through their heart. They're not allowing things to filter through their bodies and their chakras and their spirit before they just say, yeah, no, not going to do it. Are you okay? Are you okay? Is common sense in the room with us? One of the things I've been saying to people lately is your ears are closed and your mouth is open. And you can't win war like that. Any soldier will tell you you're just as strong as the ones around you that have the same listening skills in order to apply those skills. Somebody might be too big-headed, take a left, boom, gone. While everybody else decided to think. They decided to process what was being told. You know, I think that you guys want someone to hold your hand. And we're in Aries energy. Everybody's like, oh, Aries the baby. They're the baby. They like to be held. But one thing about it is children are very independent if you just let them. Like, I always commend the adults that let their children go grocery shopping with their little carts. They create them little kitchens. They create them like miniature things that are suitable for their size and that they can do. Like, they let them cook, you know, instead of them doing sharp, they might do like the child-proof knife, but they cook just like you and I. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to create an environment, or they're trying to create different things in your life that are suitable for your size. And so many people are missing the mark. So let's get back to good old faithful, the book of wisdom, and let's break it down. Because I sat at brunch the other day with myself, and good thing I had my earpiece in, because bitch, it definitely looked like I was talking to myself, but who cares? I was. And I loved it because the conversation was very powerful. The conversation had me feeling like, you know what? I'm going to do exactly what I said I'm going to do. The entire month of February, I remember at the beginning of February, I said, I'm going to go from this point to that point. I said, this point to that point. It's now March 1st. I've gone from this point to that point. If I could just explain to you what I've done all of February, you'd be like, girl, what the fuck? I know. I don't know. I think one of the most powerful things that I also did closing out February is I realized certain things just weren't aligned. Yes, the opportunity sounds great. Yes, the opportunity seems like it's going to be beneficial. Yes, the person. Yes, the place. It doesn't align. I'm okay. I don't want that. It's taught, the Mercury retrograde has taught me, maybe you just need to communicate better. I think so many times we force communication. And I want to tell y'all, I tell y'all all the time, say that shit. But I realize is if you're going to say it, that means you have to be receptive to what someone else is going to say. And you have to be receptive to corrective action. We can complain, bitch, and gripe all day, but the very moment that someone starts acting accordingly, then it's like there's suspicion. And I feel like if we put more thought into the outcome, we will miss the intent. As I keep saying, we fear a consequence and neglect what the intent was. So as I'm reading the book of Proverbs, I'm realizing that there was huge emphasis on intent. All right, so let's get into it. I don't know. Everybody's trying to know. I'm busy. I'm busy right now. Give me a second. All right, let's get into it. All right, so chapter 1. I'm not going to read the verse. I'm just going to read you some of the notes that I had. So Proverbs verse 1 is basically, it begins with the fear of God, right? And if you don't believe in God, that's fine. Whoever your higher power is, all right? We're not here to play the semantic games of God, this, that. You know who I believe in. You know who I'm locked in with. So that's who I will be discussing. If you don't believe in that, I want you to substitute anytime that I say God, to substitute it with who you believe in. Because at the end of the day, same song, different tune. Let's get into it. Thank you. Here we go. So the first thing that I talked about, right? Me and Sister Girl was talking, chat. Me and her was talking. You know what I'm saying? People be like, oh my God, chat's so enabling. I don't know what the fuck wrong with y'all, chat GBT, because mine's really be stepping on my heart. Like, yeah, you can't say it like that. All right, so Proverbs chapter 1, let's get into it. So some of the main ideas about it was to gain wisdom, discipline, and understanding, right? But one of the key things that he says is, he urges his son to avoid sinful influence. Now, when he says son, I have already thought in my mind that when he says son, I'm thinking of the masculine energy within us, right? The action, okay? And then when he says her, I feel like he's talking about the feminine energy. Now, you do realize that there are two separate energies, but at the same time, there's actually 4 people because there's a light and dark of each side, which you need. So keep going. So one of the things that, of course, he was saying about like, don't be joining all that violent with greedy people. You know what I'm saying? People that got ill intent, don't even lock in with folks like that. Don't even lock in with folks like that. You know what I'm saying? People that's their first resort, don't even lock in with folks like that, right? He says, wisdom is personified as a woman calling out publicly, right? So anytime that he mentions a woman, I automatically think intuition, spirit. Because it says wisdom is personified as a woman calling out publicly. Wisdom is basically your intuition, how you act on your intuition. When I called out people for certain things and everybody tried to come at me and stuff like that, it's the fact of that you didn't understand I was speaking from a wise point of view. Wisdom is a universal tool. If people use it as a universal tool, they would speak more in a wise manner than to defend ignorance. All right? It says ignoring wisdom leads to destruction. Aries energy, self-destructive. All right, so I broke it down just a little bit more, right? So chapter 1 definitely gave me the foundation, the fundamentals. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of how he starts off by saying, like, look, this is how we are going to truly comprehend. Chapter 1 was all about comprehension. Chapter 1 was all about comprehension. Just letting you know, hey, look, comprehend what you actually feel and what you know and what you're being taught, and watch how your life transforms. So let's go ahead and get into chapter 2. It says, chapter 2 says it was basically talking about the rewards of you actually actively wanting to seek wisdom. See, one of the things that I loved about what I read was that within the first 2 chapters, within the first 2 chapters of Proverbs, God was like, yo, you got to pursue wisdom. You know what I'm saying? That's something you have to act. It's like, it's something that you have to put intention in. You just can't think that wisdom is just going to, pull up on you and you're actually going to be able to, utilize that. You're only going to get as much as you're able to, hold. If you don't have the mental capacity to hold all the wisdom that's actually being thrown at you, then it wouldn't matter. But once you actually start to pursue wisdom, you've now turned wisdom into a priority. You see what I'm saying? Here we go back into it. Whatever you prioritize, you will get knowledge. So when people give me the excuse of, well, we weren't all raised that way. Well, I mean, if it wasn't a priority, I wouldn't expect anything less. But now you're at the point where you can make a conscious decision to prioritize it. So, I mean, so what's the excuse now? Hello? What's the excuse now? If priority helps you gain knowledge, what's the excuse now at this age? Don't sit there and bring up nothing about your age. Don't bring up nothing, and one of the things I notice is that when I'm basically trying to tell people, look, if you just change your priorities at the very moment that you feel like things are unfit, you'll have the knowledge. It wouldn't matter if you was 21, 23, 42, 49, 59, 56. It wouldn't matter. People like to play the game over. You're young. We all don't have the same mindset. I remember when I was young, people couldn't even fathom that I was that age and had that much wisdom because I made certain things a priority. Hell, at 25, 26, I prioritized a spiritual lesson, a karmic lesson, and knowledge just came slapping me dead in the forehead. You see what I'm saying? So it's just like, stop with the excuses. Wisdom has to be, I'm telling you, it literally says that in the Bible. Okay? So look, chapter 2, he says, seek wisdom like treasure. If you want to get gold, you got to go find it. You want diamonds, you got to go find it. You want pearls, you got to find it. You see how the most valuable things have to be found? Thank you. He says, actively pursue wisdom and understanding. He said, God grants wisdom to the uprights. Okay. Another thing that wisdom, listen to this. This what really got me. Wisdom protects you from evil men, crooked paths, and the strange or adulterous women. And it says the righteous will dwell securely. Right? So look, let's break it down. Wisdom protects you from evil men. Toxic masculinity. Crooked paths. Unaligned paths that don't resonate with you. The strange and adulterous woman. Toxic femininity. And then it says the righteous will dwell securely. So those that are righteous in their journey or their pursuit of wisdom will always be secure. Now, let's kind of wheel this into the attachments, right? We talk about attachments a lot. We talk about anxious attachment, avoiding all this stuff. Sorry. We talk about all this, I had basically just tried to give people a visualization. Of course, people are like, oh, these aren't steps. And one person was like, oh, it just seems like you're trying to say that avoiding is worse than anxious. That's not what I said. I tried to visualize give you guys visualizations so you guys can see how it moves. It's not necessarily saying that, oh, if you're avoiding, you're worse than anxious, because see, you got to understand, anybody that is anxious and they're continuously, thriving in that anxiety, that's not a good thing. I'm not saying these things as is good, but these are level of suppression. The more you suppress, the more further away you get from being secure. So if you suppress your emotions, you turn anxious. You suppress them even more, you turn avoidant. You suppress them even more, you start dabbling into both of them. You know what I'm saying? You start adding things, making it worse. So it's not to say as if it's steps like, oh, well, if I take this one step, I'll be avoidant. No, it's the level of suppression matches the attachment style. The more suppressed, the worse the attachment. So that's something I want everybody to kind of just think about, right? Because another thing was that he said that, oh, sorry, let me get back to my second notes. So another thing that he was basically saying was that wisdom is protective and life-giving. Wisdom is protection. Wisdom gives you a new life. So if you think about what these books are saying, they're basically giving you the key to become an alchemist, to utilize the action of transmutation. Okay, let's keep going. So then I got into chapter 3. Now, I ain't gonna lie. When I got to chapter 5 and 6, ate me up. So I can't wait to talk about it. So Proverbs 3 is basically about trusting, right? Trusting wholeheartedly, having all faith. Faith, you know what I'm saying? No sight. No sight. And one of the things that one of the verses that really got to me was Proverbs 3:5-6, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Now, as you guys know, your heart is the passage between your spirit and your physical. You speak from what you feel in your heart. You feel things from your heart. You are grounded in your heart space. And I feel like when it says to trust God wholeheartedly, the theme that me and Sister Girl talked about, Sister Girl was like, trust God, not yourself, right? And see, I kind of disagree with Sister Girl on that, because if God is within you, then you would trust in yourself. You would believe in yourself more. And I feel like that's something that I always advocate for when it comes to us not being so codependent on God. Why would you be codependent on him if he gives you all the abilities to be exactly who he knows you can be, who you are to become? And as he does know that it does take stages, it does take time. It's not something that you will do overnight. It's not something that can happen from year to year. Because at the end of the day, one of the things that I love about a true soulful journey is that there is patience in every single step. It's not a deep desire, or it's not a direct expectation of like a deadline. And as I do know that the Aries energy that we're going through, there are a lot of deadlines, but they're only deadlines to get you to a certain point. It's not necessarily you having to get to the next level, right? It takes certain aspects of your life and certain lessons and certain people in order for you to create the level that God needs you to be at. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, there's certain qualifications that a teacher needs to actually become a teacher. The qualification that someone needs, just like going to school, getting your degree. You need the fundamental classes, math, science, whatever. Then, the last 2 years might go into your actual major. So you need certain things to get you you need certain credits to get you to be a sophomore. You need certain credits to get you to a junior. You need certain credits to actually get you to graduation. And sometimes, that gets into the mix. Sometimes you might have took an AP class, but that credit might be one less. So now you got to take a dumb gym class. I'm just giving you a little bit of an example. That's kind of how certain things are happening right now. So when it was saying like, trust God and not yourself, I did rebuttal that a little bit, because it's just like, Sister Girl, come on now. That don't make no sense. God really be trying to tell you, trust you, because trusting trusting him means you can trust you. Trusting you means you trust him. You see that level of reciprocation, that wisdom. That's not a naive outlook. That's not a naive outlook to put all your trust in God, because you putting all your trust in God means that you actually trust in yourself. And a lot of people contradict their trust in God, because they'll say, oh God, I trust you and I believe in you, da. But they won't act in that way. They won't do in that way. So I'm reading Proverbs and I'm like, okay, as someone that is teaching wisdom, I said, well, what can I learn from this? And I had to act in that way. I had to do in that way. When I told God I'm going from here to here, he said, okay. He said, well, you're telling me because you trusted me to get it done and help you do it, right? And I'm like, yeah. He said, okay, but are you going to do it? threw me for a loop because I was presented with certain things and options and opportunities. And I allowed my mind to almost trick me out of it. And I said, you know what? We're done doing this. We're doing more of this. And whatever happens as we do this, we'll work our way through it. And it never failed me at all. It never failed me to do more than I to speak. And it pushed me to get out of my comfort zone, to allow the things that I was walking on challenge me. I realized that the more you do instead of talk, you realize that everything is actually an incline. When you're talking, you're doing less walking, you're on a flat surface. And see, you don't notice how steep the incline is until you start walking. You can look at it and be like, oh, that's not that big of a hill. Then you start walking, be like, damn, this bitch is steep. The same thing of like, oh, you walk up, you say, oh my God, it looked like it was such a high elevation. You start walking, so it's not that bad. Let's keep going. Proverbs 3, it was like, of course we talk about loyalty and faithfulness bring favor. Loyalty and faithfulness, being loyal to yourself. And I told you one thing about Aries respect loyalty real bad. If you ain't never had an Aries friend, and I mean this in such a loving way, and I ain't trying to have zodiac wars, but I'm just saying, if you ain't never had an Aries friend, you ain't never had no real loyalty. Because, bitch, I will be mad at your friends for you. Be loyal. Okay? But that brings favor. That brings favor upon us. To show loyalty to yourself, it's, because I said we're also a generation of self-betrayal, but that also goes into suppression. People suppress what they feel in order to overcompensate someone else's emotions, someone else's actions, their results, whatever like that. So once again, suppression, right? So another thing it says, trust God of your own understanding. This is probably one of the most underrated qualities that someone as an alchemist would need to master, right? Because to know nothing is to know everything. To know nothing is to know everything. And when I say that, meaning that if you know something, but you still have this, I guess I want to say openness to know. I mean, like one of the things I always say is, I just kind of shrug my shoulders. Like, I'll be like, that sounds about right. But hey, we'll see. I leave it open-ended. Do I have a thought? Do I kind of trust in what I feel? Yes. But I leave it open because I don't want to miss something. It makes me think of how we watch movies, and as we watch the movie the first time, we might not catch it. The second time, we might catch one more extra thing. The third time we watch it, we be like, oh, I didn't see that. Because even just you doing the act of rewatching the movie, you're leaving yourself an open pathway or open, grid to inspect, to interpret, So that's another key quality that someone as an alchemist would need to use, that Proverbs 3 really kind of, it really put me up on game, because it also confirms how I always say God is very clever. If you don't think God is green, if you don't think God is, naive and slow and all this fairies and dust, you'll understand that having God's understanding is realizing how clever he is, how he moves. That really be my confirmation right there. Me being in hey, this is what I feel, but we'll see. It lets me see things play by play by play by play. Y'all, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. I was in my bed yesterday, right? Got home. And I was in my bed, and I sat in my bed, and I was talking, I love, I do my little divination, my home brings me just so much grace. I love just feeling the spirit, And I had a revelation. And I said, I looked at that opportunity like a joke because I was always having fun. And I didn't take that could be a serious, I can't be serious in that. I'm having fun. That ain't where business happens. I started thinking about what happens there and what I do, with how I interact with people. And I just started to have all these thought processes of like who I am, who I'm becoming. And I said, I've been avoiding what felt the best the entire time. It was right there in front of me. And I'm trying to do everything else. Because I look at it as too much of a good time, because how dare we be happy in workplaces? How dare we be happy in live places? How dare we be happy and interact with people? How dare happiness be the foundation of our existence? And I said, well, as my grandma would say, I declare. Because, excuse me? What was I thinking? Why didn't I just do that in the first place? But because I didn't stick to my own understanding, I was given the clarity and the revelation to his cleverness. If I wasn't able to feel worthy of allowing happiness to be my foundation, it wouldn't matter what he told me, because I always would have been looking at it in the outlook of that it was supposed to be an escape. It was just supposed to be like a treat. I was looking at it as it wasn't something that could actually be my foundation. I didn't see it that way. And when I started prioritizing peace and fun and happiness and smiles and beauty, that's the only way I was able to see it. Proverbs 3 threw me for a loop with that one. It threw me for a loop. I get why Sister Girl interpreted that way, and I get where some people can interpret it when they say, trust God, not yourself. I get it, because if you solely bet on or bank on your own understanding, you will always feel like you're missing something, because you're not giving yourself the vulnerability to receive the full truth and nothing but the truth. So help you God, right? So another key points that was brought up in chapter 3 was that God disciplines those he loves. Right. And this goes into my point what I was saying earlier about fearing the consequence over the intent. We have to realize that discipline is not always deemed as an error, right? Discipline is more just like structure, or just more of a positive, constructive criticism, right? And I think because we kind of grew up with discipline being a physical action or something like that, we don't really leave ourselves room to actually be corrected without thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get a whooping. And I'm going to give you an example. So today I was at the store, and this little girl dropped her iPad. She was so focused on how her mother was going to react that she couldn't even pick up the iPad. Like, she was so distraught. She was like, oh my God. And I'm standing behind her, and I just stopped walking. And her mom was like, just pick it up. But that to me was kind of like, she was more worried about her mother's reaction than the iPad. Like, she couldn't even focus on picking up the iPad because she was so focused on what was going to happen that she dropped the iPad. And I feel like that fear of the consequence, it has us neglecting the intent. She was not swinging it around. They just were being a little bit of a rush, and she just dropped it. She wasn't even watching it. It just kind of just dropped out her hand. She had a little loop or whatever. So it's like just that instant kind of just brought me that clarity of like, wow, we truly do fear a consequence without the intent. Because if you actually pay attention to the intent, you'd realize that God's not tripping over a lot of things. The discipline that he's going to give you is, telling you, hey, get up. Hey, just keep going. Hey, it's not that serious. It's okay. We always feel like every wrong is going to be the end. Like, all life is going to crash down. And what I realized is that a lot of the times that life truly crashed down is because that's what needed to happen. You were being destructive. It was a reflection of how destructive you were being to your body, to your energy, to your mind, to your spirit. It was a reflection, sweetie. So as I can understand why you do feel the way that you do in certain aspects of like, oh, well, we shouldn't do this. I'm telling you now, reading Proverbs 3 made me realize we have to stop fearing a consequence, and we really need to embody the intent, because we're not perfect. If God wanted you perfect, I promise you wouldn't have been a human in this lifetime or on earth. Earth is meant to be experimental. So things happen. Okay, here we go. Another key thing was so great was wisdom is more valuable than silver and gold. Gold is one of the most valuable things on earth. Wisdom is more valuable than silver and gold. Do you see why it's so detrimental for you to grasp it is that you see why it's so important. It's important for you to process it and actually think about it. There is power in wisdom. Hence why the world is so ready to rebuttal anything that is good for our spirit and a woman, which is feminine energy or intuition. There's always a rebuttal. People will always rebuttal wisdom because wisdom actually creates empires. Wisdom creates power dynamics. Wisdom creates powerful people. Wisdom creates everything of true worth and value. Okay. Another key point was practical instructions on generosity and neighborly living. One of the other things that he kind of talked about in chapter 3 that I was kind of like was the neighborly. And I think he talked a little bit more about it like as we got into chapter 4. But I thought it was funny when they started talking about the neighbor, because it made me realize that we are all human. We're all souls. We're living on this world to do these things. And then I might add that because we are souls, we are humans, that means people are having the cycle of life of not taking wisdom. And so you have to be very much so aware when you are around those that are not listening. It's contagious. You know, one thing that my dad had taught me when I was younger, when, about, because, he was trying to get God in my life. And he taught me about a rebellious mind. And that's something I could never forget. And as I get older, I interpret what a rebellious mind is way differently. The way he said a rebellious mind was like, after God told you so many times, then, he'll turn you away. Where are you going? And when he told me that, I mean, hey, I'm not going to lie. I kind of did, it was like, oh my God, like I have to be perfect. I have to do this because I don't want God to turn me away. And, like they say about, disrespecting your elders will shorten your days. My grandma used to say that too. And realizing that I don't think y'all really knew what y'all talk about. You know what I'm saying? So some things I just don't think y'all actually knew the true interpretation about it, because when I hear a rebellious mind now, a rebellious mind to me is someone that is not taking the opportunity to utilize the wisdom that's been given to them, and that they are continuously living in a very destructive mindset, which is creating a very destructive environment. And what is someone that is destructive, or what is someone that is actually utilizing wisdom going to do for someone that's in destruction? They're like Taz. What am I going to do? And so when he started discussing about the neighbor, I was like, I get it now. What am I going to do? There's really nothing that I can do. This is something that you have to be able to accept. You have to pursue it. The first 3 chapters of Proverbs really had me like, oh, okay. I get it. Because so many times we'll take people's inability, or we'll take their lack of comprehension and accountability, we'll take it personally in a way, because we know our intent behind things. However, if someone is already in a destructive mindset, where did you think you were going to bring some type of structure? Where did you think you were going to bring some type of, narrow line? Okay, keep going. So another thing about Proverbs 3 was that it basically was saying this is something you have to do continuously. Consistency. Because it says wisdom shows up daily, shows up daily in trust, humility, and generosity. So clearly this is something that will show up every day. It's something you'll utilize. It's universal. Okay. So then chapter 4 comes up. He starts talking about the heart, right? God was like, yo, look, guard the heart, right? Stay on the path of wisdom. Staying on the path of wisdom keeps your heart pure. And the more I actually dissected chapter 4, the more I realized why this was so important for us to discuss during this Mercury and Pisces retrograde. Because there's so many things of your past that trigger wounds that your future self doesn't know how to identify with. I told you guys, ego is created off experiences. Your inner child can be very confused by certain things and certain ways you're acting because you never experienced that. So that it knows that it's coming from a place of projection. Someone has every negative emotion is attached to somebody. So if you've never had that experience with that person, I mean, how are we already deeming this as a negative? You see what I'm saying? So chapter 4 was like, guard your heart, right? Stay on the path with the wisdom, guard your heart. If you do that, you'll be straight, right? Because some of the key points that he says, it says the father recounts his own father's teaching. And one of the things that I love that he talks about this energy is that he talks about father and son. And it always makes me think of how I always say, fathers are meant to help with self-confidence and women are here for self-love. It's how you get sons and how you get daughters. And so it makes me think of how God nurtures our masculine energy with us to be confident. Confidence is more of an action than it is a feeling. Okay. And so he kind of goes in depth about, how wisdom is supreme and, get it at any cost. You got to leave a job because wisdom has now struck you, leave it. If you got to leave a person because wisdom has struck you, leave it. If you have to leave yourself, damn it, on the side of the road, leave it. Wisdom is the key to success. One of the craziest things that I was reading when I got to chapter 4 was like, the way he kind of kicked it was like, if you stay open to my understanding, right? Boom. You stay open to my understanding, your heart won't hurt as much because your soul has already, you know what I'm saying? Like your soul has already locked in on what it is that your ego can't. I keep talking about this because like the first 6 chapters kind of gave me, like, I know as we gradually go in through Proverbs, the whole book, it'll really align everything about the ego. But this really kind of got me at the surface of the ego. It kind of made me it's starting to make me understand ego more, because as you read, you realize that a lot of the things that he's, kind of coaching you on or kind of, keeping you away from or keeping you informed about is things that are being led by ego. One of the acronyms that I use for ego is evolving gracefully over time. And if you look at Proverbs and you look at how I use that acronym, you realize that evolving gracefully over time only comes from wisdom, because wisdom comes from accountability. Accountability comes from awareness. So as you gain the awareness, there is some evolving that's happening. As you take accountability, that's why you're able to do it gracefully. That's why when you are having an outer body experience about your ego, about certain things, that's why you can't truly grasp the betrayal. You can't grasp the hurt. You can't grasp the anger, the sadness. You can't grasp it because the ego is holding on to something that the soul has already released. So it's like, that's why you can't fully be upset about certain things, because you've already been reassured. Like Proverbs was like, yo, if your heart's guarded, if you already on the path of wisdom, that's why you can't really be upset. That's why you really can't be annoyed. That's why, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's why your emotions go through like, man, I'll be irritated one second and be fine the next, because it's just like, it is what it is. My human ego emotion is tied to this inconvenience. My ego emotion is tied to this surprise of information or surprise of the encounter. My ego is attached to it. Whole time my soul's like, it'll be fine. Because I already gained the wisdom to know that trusting in me is trusting in him. Trusting in him is trusting in me. The foundation, the fundamentals. Once you grasp the fundamentals, it's easy for you to become an alchemist. It's crazy because so many people ask me so many times, they're like, can you explain how to transmute? And I'll just be like, I don't really know how to explain it, because every time I try to give y'all some, say put y'all up on something, y'all want to take the easy way out. I think the easiest way to get through shit, to gain the most power about something, is going straight through that bitch. I mean, straight through it. No needs to go around it, go straight through it. I'm going to give you an example. I made a video and I was saying about how everybody was saying, when people come back from your past, you just need to decline it. And in my mind, I'm like, why? Now, they abuse you, they hurt you, you know what I'm saying? Come on, use your mind. But it's like for those that maybe just wasn't, the compatibility wasn't there, the chemistry wasn't there, or just something was misaligned, why not? See what's up. And why do I say that? It's because if you've evolved like you said you evolved, it ain't gonna work no way. So instead of you having that bad taste in your mouth, that kind of nasty aftertaste about the situation, why don't you actually go through it, just straight through it, so you can realize, oh, it just needed a little bit more nutmeg, And by nutmeg meaning that, oh, it just needed a little bit more compatibility. It needed more communication. It needed more boundaries. It needed more, that's what it needed. And when you actually can realize you can perfect a recipe, the ego is satisfied. The ego loves validation. The ego loves to be stroked. If you can perfect the recipe, you satisfy the ego, the soul is already like, well, you're welcome. Because I was having a conversation with myself the other day at brunch, and we're getting towards the part where I was saying this, is that the soul already knows it's going to lose the battle. The soul already knows that. When it comes to a lot of things in your life, the soul knows that the ego trumps it. I had to really put into perspective that, was the ego the man and the ego was was the soul the man and the ego was the woman? Because they always say like life revolves around women, which is true. And in a man's life, so when some men are like, oh, my life can't revolve around you, it's kind of crazy, because any man that actually is with a woman of a certain level of spirituality, caliber, energy, whatever, his world revolves around her, and then because of her, his world evolves. So it got me to thinking, if my masculine energy, which is the soul, just follow me. If my soul creates a certain space that my ego is actually comfortable with, that means that because I've done that, now my world revolves around my ego. And because my ego has a space to thrive and to flourish, that means that now my world evolves more because of that. Just a thought. I really had to think about that, because ego rules the world. Ego is what truly drives everything. So when I put that into perspective, utilizing this, I said, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. I'm just saying. So chapter 4 also talks about how the path of the righteous gets brighter. Hello. Another thing was said, avoid the path of wicked. Wickedness just brings too much. It brings too much shit, too much bull, BS. I don't like it. One thing I don't like about the path of wickedness is that it brings awkward shit. Sorry. It brings awkward shit. I don't like that awkwardness. You know what I'm saying? It brings a lack of authenticity. It brings a lack of just transparency. It brings just a lack. Like, it literally just brings $1 on a penny on $1. Like, I know people engage in wickedness because, they want to seek this revenge. They want their ego to be validated for all the pain that they went through. I'm at the point now where the wickedness just ain't working for me no more. It just isn't working for me anymore. I think it's completely a waste of time. It's annoying. It actually is not satisfying as we think. It's like, it just gets old after a while. It's like, oh, okay, well, now that, it's like, how long are you going to cope? How long are you going to soothe yourself with this? It's like, it makes me think of like with kids with like certain toys or like certain coping mechanisms, how one day they just stop. That's just kind of what it gives me. Like the wickedness at one point, you just be like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. I'm just gonna stop. So here we go. I'm just saying. Popular verse that people probably know, which is Proverbs 4:23. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Intent. So one of the key takeaways that I kind of got from Proverbs 4 is that your inner life determines your direction. Your inner life your wisdom determines your direction in life. How you actually transfer messages, or how you actually convey messages to your ego, is what keeps you in that direction. If the soul is the man has to talk to the woman with kindness, patience, and all that in order for her to feel comfortable to be vulnerable. He has to set that foundation. She has to be willing to walk in the foundation and find comfort in in that environment. So let's keep going. All right. Chapter 5. Okay, so Proverbs 5 is about adultery. This gave me sexual energy all over. It gave me the sacral. And y'all know the sacral is connected to your creative energy, your receptive energy, your money, and your emotions. So let's get into it. The danger of sexual immortality. Seductive speech of adulterous women. Toxic femininity. You throwing coochie over intimacy. You're throwing coochie over, power. Over vulnerability. And this also, reading this also made me realize that sexual energy and sexual power is very normal. And I feel like the shame of it, or the feeling of being used for sex, comes from a place of wanting to be validated through the sex. And as someone that went through that as a young woman, I want to say that I somewhat did validate certain things through sex, because I wasn't able to find an outlet for my creative energy. So sex just came the next best thing, which is where a lot of promiscuous energy comes from. It comes from not having a positive outlet for the sexual energy, for the emotions. Your emotions aren't being processed, so you just want to fuck. That's how, trauma bonds happen with relationships. Even, I always say a friend that's jealous of you is also a friend that wants to have sex with you, because you can't tell me that the sexual energy with them isn't riled up, because their emotions are riled up. That's how predators happen, rape, sexual assault. That all happens in that aspect, because the emotions of it are all in shambles, which is causing there to be a power dynamic issue. So when I read the Proverbs 5, he was like, immortality leads to shame, loss, and regret. Another thing, it says, rejoice in the spouse of your youth, your inner child. Don't engage in sexual acts that your inner child is not comfortable with. If you are doing it in order to fulfill a desire or an emotional pain, don't do it. The inner child is not, and I don't want you to look at children, like, I don't want you to look at this as I'm talking about a kid. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying it's like teenage love, teenage sex, right? The excitement of it gets everything riled up, right? I want you to understand that don't engage in sexual behaviors if your inner child has not gained some type of clarity and acceptance. Because I told you, sexual assault or anything that goes against your sexual energy is trying to take away your wisdom. Your innocence and your wisdom, your power. So when I read that, I was like, wow, you really had to put things into a larger perspective when it comes to sex. Because so many people have deemed sex as bad. Some people say, everybody says that God says, oh, sex is this, sex is that. God don't want this. And that's crazy, because why would that be the only way that we could procreate children? Why would that be the only way that we can actually get the energy? Why would he put sexual energy and money and emotions in the same place if the inner child wasn't supposed to be comfortable with who it's happening and when it's happening? Come on. That don't even be making sense. Why would he, and don't get me into this whole, with the devil, this, all that. That's crazy. If the devil created sex, then we need to, all humans need to be extinct. The sexual energy comes from a very comfortable place for the inner child. I also want to add that it comes from a place of a positive creative energy. So he brings up basically about, infidelity and all that. And, that's kind of what he talks about. Don't be out here, doing all that. Right. Why do I say that? As someone that has a Taurus Venus, I can tell that some relationships, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't really believe in all that cheating shit like that, because it's just like, it's all coming from a very insecure place. Emotion. Inner child's not comfortable, right? So, I'm reading Proverbs 5, and I'm like, yo, I get what you're saying on this, because when you think about it, when you're doing something in the sense of cheating, right? And you're sharing this sexual energy, you are doing nothing but trying to find comfort in a home for your inner child to feel fulfilled in. That's why when men just, that's why they say men have to master not depleting themselves of their sperm, because they're just depleting themselves of coming whole with their emotions. That's how all that false sexuality, that's how that's happening. Not being authentic with who you like, all that, DL shit. That's how that happens. Because where they're comfortable, their inner child feels comfortable, right? But because they're not able to find that comfort, they're not able to accept that comfort, that's why they give it and spread it all around. It's like a guilty pleasure. And it all roots from shame, which shame is what? An emotion that is where in the sacral that does what? Transmute into promiscuous behavior. Okay, let's get into it. We're gonna break it down a little bit more. So, I get a little bit deeper into it. He was like, another strong warning against adultery. And I feel here's my thing about it. One thing about it, I'm not finna sit here and judge because I've done everything. I don't feel no shame, no regret for anything that I've done. I did it. I did that shit. So one of the things that I really got from it was that when you take the time to compromise, finding true comfort for your inner child, it leads to a serious consequence. And when I think about the days that I was promiscuous, I think about the consequences that I dealt with because I was so prone to try. I was so headstrong, I was so determined and headstrong to find a safe home outside of me. I've definitely caught an STD before. Definitely was getting BV. BV was definitely a overspill of sexual energy. And it was because there were energies intertwining that weren't good for me. Anytime that I caught BV, I know for a fact of, yes, of course, we know the scientific meaning behind it, but I knew for a fact of it's because I was in an unsafe home. I haven't had the happiest fat ma until I started finding home within self. My desire for pleasure was never the issue, but me constantly trying to make a home with something that's not deserving of a good home. I'm basically trying to feed the less fortunate. I'm trying to bring in the homeless. That's where we are. Promiscuous behavior comes from not being able to find a home within yourself. That's why I don't understand why so many people have things against sex workers. Their desire for pleasure isn't the issue. They aren't trying to fulfill, and let me not speak for all of them. Those that actually are in it and they understand who they are and they don't do it out of a need, they do it out of a want. They understand that they're not finding a home within the sexual energy that they're exchanging with people. That's why some of them will say all money ain't good money. That's why a lot of sex workers will kind of tell you it's all about your worth. That's why they say it's power in the P. Another thing why older people say as long as you got a coochie, it's a pocketbook. You should never have not had no money. You see what I'm saying? And so when it comes with men, they have to find security within their emotions. That's why they won't exchange energy with certain things. That's why they will stop having sex with anything with a hole. Because they realize that this energy that I can actually produce, I can actually give juice to, it's not a good investment. Women have to understand that you are the field of land of soil. You want anything planted in the house? Men have to realize certain land it makes me think of if you're in real estate, one of the things that they do is they have these people in these processes where they go test the land to make sure that it's suitable for the home to be on, because, some homes are prone for, floods and all this. So they'll be like, that land isn't worth you buying because it's not good. Like, yeah, okay, we could build this type of building, but you're trying to do a residential, that's not good. It's below sea level, all types, it just, a lot of things go into it. That's what, that chapter 5 kind of put a lot of things in perspective when it comes to sexual energy. Because it's so tied to the emotions. It's so tied to the creative power that you like, oh, yeah, that ain't really going to work. My body, I get why my body shuts down this way. I get why my body tenses up, because I'm either A, not allowing myself to be comfortable, or B, this ain't the right land for me to be on. So keep going. All right. So another thing about chapter 5 is that, going into this, the whole thing about adultery, because chapter 5 and chapter 6 kind of talk more about the sexual energy, is that it says, pay attention to wisdom to preserve judgment and discretion. It also says wisdom is protective, not restrictive. Another thing that it says is immortality is attractive at first. That's why I say it seems good at first. It seems like a good deal at first. You go on the land, you see, damn, this they only want 100K. Then you assess, you realize, oh, I see why it's only 100K. The soil is bad. None of the pipes will stick to this. We can't really build no strong house in this. This was actually meant for a farm. This was actually meant for more of a warehouse. This isn't a residential where we can dig it up and put a pool. Oh, I get it now, right? It also says that when you go into this mindset thinking that you can create comfort or find comfort everywhere, it's going to end in bitterness, regret, and destruction. The emotions are there with the sex. That's why you feel depleted. Anytime you're having sex with someone that's not trying to please you, that's where the regret comes from. You found somebody to finesse you at the land that you was trying to sell. Get into it. It also says it's this lack of understanding or this lack of processing, it hides in consequences until it's too late. That's why with some people with the whole baby thing, whatever, people don't understand, that sometimes the kid comes because that was the only thing that's the only way you was going to be able to see. For you to realize that man, to really see what the fuck was going on, a child was only going to be the only way. For people to understand that they are predators, they catch the right prey. Sometimes that's the only way. That's the only way. Because you clearly you aren't listening. Sometimes the house has to crash down. Sometimes you got to realize the contractors keep denying your request because it's not right. That's the only way you'll see. Okay? So it says here, some of the consequences of having this lack of discernment and judgment are that you lose honor, reputation, wealth, and peace. It says you also are in personal regret when damage is irreversible. That's why I also said that you shouldn't have children out of lust. This is where children out of lust happen. You didn't have a kid to be a mom. It was tied to another emotion. The comfort of your inner child, not you creating a child. The sex is what kept the emotions going, not actually truly being a deep commitment. There's chemistry, there's no compatibility. One of the things I'm learning is that I thought a lot of chemistry was a good thing until I realized what's the compatibility. And then I realized that when it comes to compatibility, sometimes the similarities aren't what's truly compatible. The similarities is it's actually chemistry. The opposites working together, that's what the compatibility is. Because you can work through the differences. You can work through the opposite person. I realized that similarities might just be a little bit of chemistry. And I mean, of course you do need both in order to maintain a relationship, but relationships that are solely off chemistry and not compatibility, there's an issue there. There's a misalignment there. The compatibility, it needs the positive to a negative. It needs two opposites. In order for something to be compatible, it has to have two sides of the coin. It has to be a polarity. Because if you are solely based off chemistry, that means that when a problem arises, when war arises, that's it. That's like having a loud person, a big personality with a big personality. Not saying that it can't work, but there will be a little bit of issues that come about because of the fact that it's two sides of the same coin. I mean, it's two coins. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. It's just not going to work. Okay. So let's keep going. So then it says, it talks a little bit more about faithful love. It says marriage is portrayed as a source of joy, intimacy, and satisfaction. When I think of marriage, I think of union within self. You can think of this about with other people, but I want us to focus on us first. When I think of marriage as being portrayed as the source of joy, intimacy, and satisfaction, I think of self. I think of the union that I have within myself that creates this joy. It creates this certain type of intimacy that I'm able to identify when there's an intimate moment. I'm able to identify where there is joy, where there is peace. If I can't find peace within, I'd never know what the fuck it looks like outside. Hence, how we got to where we got to in the world now is that we always are trying to identify something based off of what we see and not what we feel within us. I can see when I'm lacking the way to be vulnerable because I'm seeing someone else. You know what I'm saying? It's like I can see where I'm fighting vulnerability because vulnerability is now in the room. It's forcing me to do it. That's something that I don't think people understand, that when peace is really in the room, it moves different because it's going to force you to find peace within yourself. So that's why I said, if you don't have peace within, of course you're not going to be able to truly identify it. But when it does come in that room with you, it's going to put them paws on you. When vulnerability is in the room with you, it's going to put them paws on you. I think the act of me becoming more vulnerable with myself is why I'm now seeing vulnerability and realizing how it come at you. When I wasn't being vulnerable and vulnerability came in the room and was putting his paws on, fuck on, I ain't got time to deal with that. I'm walking out. But because I've allowed myself to be vulnerable, that's how I see it. And now I'm realizing, this a heavy hitter. Whole time, vulnerability, peace, excitement, joy, intimacy, they hands is registered. So they're not fighting you. They're not fighting you because, you know what I'm saying, because they feel like, they can't win. They fighting you because they can't. It's against the law. It's against the law for them to fight you. It's a charge that they would have. They're registered as certified weapons. Peace, love, happiness, intimacy, vulnerability. Those are certified weapons. I see now. I see why they was like, look, I'm not finna do this with you. Because if I put my hands on you, it's going to be something. I'm like, whatever. All that shit you talk, you just all talk. Until I started welcoming vulnerability within me. So I started welcoming peace. And I said, I see why you don't, I see why you don't engage and indulge in any type of those actions or behaviors. I see clearly. Because if you do, it's a KO, instant. Okay. So we're going to go deeper. We're going to go ahead and close out chapter 5, where it says faithfulness is not just moral, it's fulfilling. So to me, faithfulness is definitely going back to what we said about loyalty. It's where you find home. Your sanctuary. It's funny how literally I tell you guys at the beginning of the podcast that my house is my sanctuary. Another thing about break down about 5 and we'll wrap this up. It was like nothing is hidden from God. Intent. We keep talking about it. Intent. Okay. He see all paths. When you don't know where home is, you become enslaved to a mindset that's destructive. You become enslaved to destruction, and you push yourself from bringing in freedom, because freedom is definitely discipline and wisdom together. If freedom had parents, it'd be discipline and wisdom. Okay. So it's just more of saying the short-term things just don't, they're not the chemistry, the short-term satisfaction. It's not going to work. What you going to be invested in. All right. Let's get into chapter 6 and we're going to wrap this up. Okay. So chapter 6 caught me by surprise because chapter 6 was all about the warnings of daily life. These are the things that we need to keep in consideration of our foundation, right? So the first thing that it says is warning against rash financial commitments. Don't co-sign or guarantee debt without wisdom. Don't put yourself in and this is why I be trying to tell people, the moment that I became more wise, I stopped helping a lot of people. I used to be very free with money. I would give it to anybody I seen out in the open, homeless, whatever. I would just give it, even if I didn't have it to give. I just give it because I felt like nobody else, and that was nobody should have to suffer. And that was where I realized at that very moment I was being naive, stupid, and slow. Here I am thinking I'm being loving. Whole time they looking at me like, girl, she's in that situation because she put herself there. Life is about choices. Simple. And yes, sometimes things might not work like we think, but they're all part of a choice that we decided to make. And so as I'm reading chapter 6, it says, act quickly to free yourself if trapped. When I tell you chapter 6 had me on go, God said, at the very moment you feel trapped, get out. Literally, chapter 6 basically says the very moment you feel trapped in any instant, get out of it. God does not trap. He says, choose me. The only person that's trapping motherfuckers is the devil. The moment you feel trapped, you need to get out of there. You feel trapped in your house. You feel trapped in a relationship. You feel trapped at your job. You need to get out of there. And it literally says quickly, act quickly, right? Because it says laziness leads to poverty. When people are too comfortable, it leads to destruction. It leads to destruction. Okay? Discipline and initiative brings stability. It also says the trouble of a corrupt person. Deceitful speech and manipulation lead to sudden ruin. Meaning, people that do too much of this and not enough this create problems. If I ain't seeing you move and I'm hearing you talk, I know for a fact that you walking on a flat surface. You don't know what it feels like to walk up Stone Mountain. That's why people that's always trying to finesse, they talk. And then they not walking like they talking. That's what really be blowing me. That's why I say as a teacher, I will never teach y'all something that that I haven't already walked. I done put the theory to test. I got my ass out in the field and God did nothing but show me that I am doing what I need to do and that life is meant to be lived. You're not perfect. You gain wisdom through experiences. But how are you going to gain the wisdom if you aren't experiencing anything? You cannot be scared of the consequence if you don't understand your intent. If you understand your intent, what are you fearing? If God is within me, who can be against me? Hello? So get into it. It says character flaws eventually surface. He goes into the 7 things that he hates, right? He said he hates pride, he hates lying, violence, wicked scheme, eagerness to do evil, false witnesses, those who sow discord, and emphasis on attitudes and action. Don't this all go into intention? These 7 things are also the 7 things that Saturn gets you to get together. These 7 things are also the things that Saturn tries to fix within you. That pride that you have to show your face and to start over and to do what you need to do what's best for you, Saturn definitely tells you, choose you at the end of the day. That lying to yourself and lying to others and about situations that you know you need to have truth about, Saturn tells you, let's face the music, face the truth and accept it. That violent behavior that you have towards people, if that's your first act of a resolution, Saturn says, let's go ahead and fix that because that shows incompetence, it shows illiteracy, and it shows emotional immaturity. Let's fix it. When people are trying to act violence towards somebody else and they get caught in the wind fire, you try to rob somebody's house and you get popped in, that's what the fuck you get. See, that's what I'm saying. Stop trying to pick violence. Another thing, wicked schemes. Why are you doing all of that? Why is your intent so malicious? Saturn says, why maliciousness? That's why if you ever pay attention to Capricorns, I always say they're so vicious and they're very manipulative and they are very malicious. Capricorn people have Capricorn placements and Cancers. Do you see how malicious they are? Thank you. Let's keep going. Eagerness to do evil. Why? You need power that much? You're suffering that much? Why? False witnesses. Why are you lying? Why you were not there? Saturn reveals the people that actually were there in situations, circumstances, and he said, you weren't there. What are you doing? What are you talking about? As I read chapter 6, I kind of really was like, dang. When we sit here and ask more questions instead of, when we ask questions and listen instead of the assumption, we realize there's a lot of things that are happening that don't make sense. And these are key qualities that you need as an alchemist to be able to transmute. Because That doesn't even make sense. And here I am utilizing this information in my formula, in my equation, and I'm trying to figure out why isn't the experiment succeeding? Because I'm trying to put a Mento in sparkling water when it's supposed to go in Coke. You're not reading the directions. Proverbs 1-6 basically says, hey, look, I'm going to give you the instructions, and then I'm going to tell you what to do if the instructions don't make sense. I'm going to tell you how to fix it. I'm going to tell you, what customer service number to call. And then I'm going to show you what happens when you don't listen to the instructions and what's the result of it. That's what chapter 1-6 gave of the foundation, the fundamentals. Because then he says, those who sow discord and emphasis on attitudes and actions. Are you okay? He brings up again another warning against adultery. God gives you so many warnings when it comes to the sacral of the emotions. And he literally tells you that's your most powerful chakra. That's the most powerful part of your body. Use it wisely. I'm not saying you can't be out here enjoying yourself, but enjoy it with the desire of pleasure, not the need of comfort. Hello? He says sexual sin is portrayed as self-destructive. Unlike theft, adultery brings lasting shame and broken trust. Because you over here trying to find a home and shit. Find it within yourself. Find it within yourself. That's why I know when people find it within themselves, that's why they stop marrying people for no reason or having children for no reason. Like, some people are just doing things for no reason. Like, I need a reason. I need a reason for us to be together. I need a reason for us to be married. I need a reason to work at this job. If I don't have a reason, I don't need to be there because I'm not desperate for no house. I'm not desperate for comfort. I don't need anything that bad that I have to literally betray myself of what I feel and want to fulfill to feel what? It's like when you in somebody's house and they really don't want you there. It's like they say, oh, I'll help you. But then when you really need their help, they really don't want to give it. It all contradicts itself. There seems to be a true big misunderstanding. That's one of the things that I kind of get from chapter 6 is that I'm going to tell you the reasoning behind a lot of misunderstandings, misinterpretation, anything that was missed. I'm going to tell you what the contradiction was. The 7 things that God hates in chapter 6, verse 16 through 19, is literally God saying, these are what the contradictions are. This is what's behind them. He says, jealousy and consequences cannot be undone. When I told people you can't say you jealous around me and stuff like that, people was like, oh, it's normal. Why would it be normal? It's literally, it comes from something that hasn't been able to be fulfilled. Are you okay? All right. A lot of the core messages of that, chapter 1-6 kind of brought me that wisdom applies to every day. Simple, right? One of the things that it got me was that avoiding it literally leads to disaster. How I know? Look at our world. How I know that wisdom leads to disaster is that so many people are not able to be in the same room or energetic field as me. That's how I know a lack of wisdom brings destruction, because so many people are trying to find comfort. The dire need for comfort is coming from people are not willing to pursue wisdom. It's not a coincidence. A lot of things that are happening is because people are not utilizing their wisdom and they're not actively pursuing it. So I get it. You're in a destructive mindset because you don't want to pursue, because wisdom being pursued takes work. Your ego only likes the validation. It only likes the outcome of situations, the potential outcomes. It doesn't actually like what has to go into it. What Future say? Evil world we live in. We're going to do this. We're going to do this each Sunday. I'm going to make sure we talk about this. We're going to talk about 6 verses until I get to 31. This is the beginning. We're talking about being an alchemist and the action of transmutation. This is the fundamentals. We're gonna get deep. It's gonna go deeper and deeper and deeper as we go. I already know, because if you listen to this and was like, "Wow," and then you go read chapters 1 through 6, because I mean, there's no point in me reading it. You can go read it yourself. You let me know. So I'll see you next game. I'll see you next Sunday. Remember, no reneging, no talking across the table, no ego, only soul evolution. This was Speaking of Spade. I'm Spade. I'll see y'all later. Mwah.